Hello and welcome to Total Market Solutions. I'm Bonnie Hughes, VP Marketing and Sales for Red Cloud Klondike Strike. Today we're speaking with Emmerson. They have a very interesting project in Morocco. It's potash, and they also have a lot of exploration potential around the project. And here today to tell us all about the project and where it's going and what's happening with it is Hayden Locke, CEO. Hello, Hayden.
Hi, Bonnie.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, I understand that you're in the process of putting out and developing a scoping study, and you just put out news recently on some of the costings for road. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, we put out an announcement at the start of this week, which is really talking about the connection to the transport and logistics infrastructure. Potash is a bulk commodity, so transport and logistics is an incredibly important part of the story in terms of how you get it to your end customer. And what it showed is we have an incredibly low CapEx solution to access that transport and logistics infrastructure in Morocco.
Because I understand the biggest problem with potash projects is usually the CapEx, as in the billions of dollar phase. And from your early economic studies, the CapEx is quite low.
Well, we haven't actually put out any economic studies yet, but we've put out little pieces of the scoping study that are certainly indicating the management's belief that this has the potential to be low CapEx. Everything is falling in the way that we expected it to, so we're pretty excited about it. The scoping study is progressing extremely well, and we look forward to releasing that to the market, which will then give the end-to-end capital cost estimate, and we think it'll paint the picture that this is a low CapEx development.
So I understand there's a lot of phosphate projects in Morocco, but not a lot on the potash side. And how will that be of benefit to you being in Morocco and having the project there?
Morocco is the world's largest producer of phosphate rock, controlled exclusively by a company called OCP, which is one of the world's largest fertiliser companies. So you're absolutely right, they are an incredibly large producer of phosphate. Interestingly, OCP is pursuing an aggressive strategy moving downstream into more NPK blended fertilisers. Obviously they control the P in that NPK blend. The one aspect that they don't control is the K. So we see ourselves as a very logical supply partner for them once we move through these de-risking milestones and move towards production. So very logical strategic partner there for us in the long term.
And I understand the potash price has been doing quite well these days.
It's been doing amazingly well, and it's something, I'm glad you brought it up. It's something that it seems that the market's not really taking notice of it. I was looking at some information today. The Brazilian potash price is now at $360 a tonne, which incredibly is up 30% in the last 12 months. That's a big move for any commodity, and most analysts are predicting more strength in the potash market to come. I saw a note from Argus this morning saying that they're revising their forecasts, believing that there's more strength to come in the market. So we're pretty bullish in the short to medium term on potash, and very, very bullish in the long term.
And are you working on some exploration around the current JORC resource that you have at the moment?
We have an exploration target out in the northeastern extent of the basin. The resource that we have currently is probably large enough to have a 20-year mine life, so it's already a large resource, but there is exploration upside. We'll probably put a drill hole in there next year to assess that exploration target and just work out how much bigger the basin can possibly be. But yeah, certainly we're pretty comfortable with the size of our resource as it currently is.
So when you complete the scoping study in the first quarter of next year, which is the plan, what will be the next steps for you?
Well, we're about to start drilling as well, so part of the ongoing work that we're doing is we're going to drill out the rest of the deposit to bring it up to that indicated and or measured level of JORC resource. That's really looking forward to potentially releasing a reserve statement sometime after the PFS. We've got to do some detailed metallurgical work, which will commence after the drilling program. There's plenty of work to do, but the next really big milestone for us as a company is that first initial assessment to say, what does this project actually look like? We're getting an independent consultant to do that for us. Adds credibility. They're going to sign off on it, so we're pretty excited about that piece of news flow.
And are you currently looking for potential offtake agreements for the potash?
It's probably a little early for us to start that process. We've got to respect the fact that we're a couple of years away from any sort of production, and so we don't want to waste potential customers' time at this point. But needless to say, I know a lot of the off-takers in the market, and I've already had some early stage discussions with them. That will progress slowly over the coming years.
And what is your background? Obviously, if you've got some relationships, you must have been in the potash business previously.
Yeah, I worked for a company called Highfield Resources, which is ASX listed. Fantastic development stage potash project. more advanced than Emmerson, already financed, awaiting its permits. It's a really interesting project. The reason I took this job is because I see a lot of the same attributes in Highfield Resources. I see those in the Emmerson projects.
It's always good to have some historical background and some experience in that field.
That's right.
Because obviously potash is a lot different than other
Very
mining
different.
projects.
Exactly right. Yes, very different.
And it's been a bit difficult for the market to understand how a potash project develops as opposed to like a gold project and how they move it forward.
That's right, and I think in 2008 and 2009, the potash price absolutely boomed, to historic all-time highs. And as a result, a lot of potash projects came out of the woodwork, and there were lots of development stories. Very, very few of them ever made it past sort of DFS stage. And so I think potash has not been a focus for the market. Obviously, we have Sirius, who's done a great job here in the UK. We're taking it slowly, trying to educate the market that there are important things in potash, of which number one is capital cost of production, and location, which we have a great location, is very important for your ongoing competitiveness once you get into production.
And you recognized a way to reduce your capex was by putting into declines on the project. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you came to figure that that would be much better for the project.
So our experience at Highfield is really what led us to that conclusion, and I think being able to do a decline is just a function of the geology of the deposit, namely the lack of an aquifer overlying the potash horizon. If you have no aquifer, it means you don't have to manage water inflow and all of those sorts of things. You can do a decline in that sort of geology. So when I did my diligence on this project before I joined, it was one of the key questions I asked. We benefit from having a 136 drill hole database. None of those drill holes indicate the presence of an aquifer. So my experience told me we're likely to be able to access this mineralisation in a lot cheaper way. The big cost savings that you can make on the potash development are really on your access to mineralisation and at the back end in terms of your infrastructure solution. And both of those questions, when I did my diligence and I went down to the site, I saw pretty positive signs.
So it's unusual for a company usually to put out costing as they go along in the study. They usually put it out all at once. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really helpful. Is the market to expect some more kind of pieces of the scoping study to come out in the weeks to come?
Absolutely. This is a development stage story, and what we recognise is the market needs news flow to be able to further assess, the viability, run their own numbers, get an early idea of what we're seeing as a management team. We don't want to remain silent for 6 or 12 months and then suddenly deliver something and expect the market to react favourably to that. So we made a very clear decision to break this down into logical pieces of the scoping study that we can release and talk about, which will all lead up to the delivery of that scoping study. And the obvious things are access to mineralisation, which we put out an announcement on. The next piece was the access to the road infrastructure, transport. The next will be access to the electrical infrastructure around the site. Morocco has incredible infrastructure in general, certainly on the electrical transmission and generation side, fantastic infrastructure. So we'll put out some news on that. Ports, again, we'll put out some news on that. All of that ahead of the scoping study so people can start to build that picture of cost savings that we're seeing.
Excellent. And when can they expect an update to the resource?
Post the drilling. So the drilling will start towards the end of this month. We're drilling 10 or 11 holes. Once that's done, it'll take us a little bit of time to go through and model all of the historic data and the new data. So I'd expect a resource update at the end of that drilling program. And that's really focused not necessarily on extra tonnes, but bringing it up into that higher confidence category of the indicated or even some measured.
And certainly the historical data basically reduces your drilling costs quite a bit, which is very helpful for a junior. And I guess you have enough basically cash to get you through to your scoping study?
We're very well funded. We've got more than enough money to get through the scoping study, the drilling, the met testing, and probably a long way into that pre-feasibility. So it's certainly until the end of next year we're funded, which is a great position to be in. The point you make is a really good one. The vast majority of cost for a junior company going through these development phases is on the drilling to increase the resource confidence. We've done a lot of that work, or we're benefiting from a lot of that work already being done. So that significantly reduces our funding requirement, which is why we're well funded.
Well, certainly the market will look forward to your ongoing news flow, and the scoping study will obviously give the market some more confidence in the project, which will hopefully help the share price. And thank you very much for joining us, Hayden, and I look forward to speaking with you again as the project develops and grows. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Total Market Solutions.